saw them executing Lannister prisoners in the street, on your orders.
We can't hide behind small mercies. The world we need won't be built by men loyal to the world we have.
The finale of Game of Thrones didn't sit well with everyone. Many questions arose, especially regarding Daenerys' behavior. Throughout the story, she consistently pursued her great goal: to protect ordinary people, become a just ruler, and end tyranny.
You will release every slave in Yunkai. Every man, woman, and child should be given as much food, clothing, and property as they can carry as payment.
But suddenly, when victory was already in her hands, she inexplicably loses her mind and turns King's Landing to ashes along with its residents. And this plot twist, to put it mildly, wasn't liked by everyone. Many viewers found it illogical, and most agreed that after the 5th season, the writers Benioff and Weiss lost George Martin's book foundation and had to improvise, leading to such a controversial finale with Daenerys, which seemed like a banal character dump. But what if I propose a theory that logically and reasonably explains Daenerys' actions? Moreover, this theory is based not on the series, but on the original source. George Martin's original books, that is, on the canon itself. According to this theory, Daenerys' actions are not only explainable, but also fully fit into the logic of the Song of Ice and Fire world. So what is the reason for Daenerys' so-called madness? Daenerys Stormborn, Mother of Dragons, Liberator of Slaves. To understand the reasons that led to the burning of King's Landing, let's analyze her path in George Martin's books and in the HBO adaptation. The first seasons almost completely repeat the events of the books. Daenerys' journey in the books begins in exile. She is the last surviving member of the Targaryen house, sold by her brother to the barbarian warrior Khal Drogo.
He's a savage, of course, but he's one of the finest killers alive. And you will be his queen.
Initially, she is a scared girl, but with each chapter, she gains experience and confidence. She loses her husband, but emerges from the fire with 3 dragons, which becomes a turning point in history. Next, she moves through Slaver's Bay, capturing Astapor, liberating Yunkai, and taking Meereen. In Meereen, she faces misunderstanding, sabotage, uprisings, murders, and constant instability. Her dragons become increasingly uncontrollable, especially Drogon, who eventually takes her away from the city. In fact, this is where the material the series was based on ends. And from there, Benioff and Weiss had to work without relying on George Martin's original works. In Martin's books published to date, Daenerys' storyline ends at the following point. She is alone and exhausted with Drogon in the steppe, far from Meereen. This is where A Dance with Dragons ends, and her further fate in the books remains unknown. She has not yet begun the conquest of Westeros, has not met Jon Snow, and has not even returned to Meereen. Daenerys' storyline in the HBO series follows the books: the marriage of Drogo, the birth of dragons, the liberation of slaves. But in the 5th and 6th seasons, the plot begins to deviate. The political line of Meereen is simplified. The conflict with the Sons of the Harpy is compressed, and Daenerys herself quickly regains control. By the end of the 6th season, she unites the Dothraki and the Unsullied and heads to Westeros.
Specific orders will be left for you regarding the welfare of Meereen and the Bay of Dragons.
Bay of Dragons?
We can't call it Slaver's Bay anymore, can we?
Then an alliance with Jon Snow, the loss of the first dragon, the battle for Winterfell, Missandei's death, the loss of the second dragon, and ultimately the tragic finale, the destruction of King's Landing and death at the hands of Jon Snow near the Iron Throne. And the question arises, how aware was George Martin of such a finale for Daenerys? And if he was, how much did he approve of it? And actually, I think he not only knew about it, but he might have been preparing such a fate for the Mother of Dragons. Why do I think so? To begin with, it should be mentioned that in several interviews, Benioff and Weiss said they consulted with George Martin about the series finale. George Martin undoubtedly had his drafts and developments for the next books. Therefore, saying that the finale was their complete improvisation is incorrect. In James Hibbert's book, Fire Cannot Kill a Dragon, Game of Thrones and the Official Untold Story of the Epic series, it is said that George Martin's meeting with the showrunners led to several revelations. Hibbert quotes George Martin, "It was not easy for me. I didn't want to reveal my books. It's not easy to talk about the finale of my books. Each character has their own ending. I told them who would be on the Iron Throne and mentioned some important plot twists like Hodor and Stannis' decision to burn his daughter. We never managed to discuss everyone, especially the secondary characters whose endings might be very different. In another source, I found information that Benioff and Weiss said that Daenerys and Jon Snow's finale was somewhat their decision. But we are now interested not in Daenerys' death, but specifically in the burning of King's Landing. Therefore, George Martin undoubtedly discussed the finale with the showrunners. And to imagine that he would simply leave the fate of one of the key characters of his many years of work to Benioff and Weiss is unthinkable to me. Moreover, after the series ended, as far as I know, correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, he did not openly criticize the finale. Yes, he said his ending would be different, but he didn't specify how. Rather, he preferred to distance himself from all of it, although he did not hide his disappointment. But personally, I have a question. Was Martin disappointed with how Benioff and Weiss concluded the series? Or with how the audience perceived the finale he had planned? Personally, it seems to me, and I understand that many may disagree, Martin was aware of everything and was deeply disappointed, specifically with the audience's reaction to the series finale. This might have been the reason he kept postponing the continuation of the books. Now he feared disappointing not only the viewers but also the readers. Although, on the other hand, if he had finished the saga, I'm sure, even with the same final outcome, he could have justified it much more deeply and convincingly. Because Martin's universe is always a meticulously constructed world, where everything is subject to internal logic. And the same finale, presented within the framework of the books, could have elicited a completely different reaction. Moreover, a sharp turn of events with an unexpected outcome for a character is quite in the spirit of George Martin. Just remember Ned Stark's execution, which in the book, just like in the series, is a surprise. The same can be said about the burning of King's Landing. It's shocking, but in some sense, it corresponds to the grim logic of A Song of Ice and Fire. Then the question arises, were there any hints in the books of such a finale? We will start investigating this with the dragons. Why exactly with them will become clear a little later. But believe me, the connection between the dragons and Daenerys' madness is much deeper than it might seem at first glance. We should start with a key question. How do people even control dragons? After all, we're not talking about horses or battle wolves, but about creatures the size of a Boeing 737, flying above the clouds and fast enough to cross the ocean. Their size, speed, and flight altitude make traditional control methods simply inapplicable. Voice commands are likely useless. At such speeds and altitudes, sound is lost. The wind tears any words from the lips. The dragon simply doesn't hear its rider. This is the logic that Martin carefully conducts through the text. We almost never find scenes in the books where someone controls a dragon with voice commands. Well, except for Dracarys, but that's not control. It's a signal for attack. Physical impact is also pointless. Trying to control a dragon with jerks or reins is unlikely. For creatures of such scale, the physical and feedback connection between a human and a dragon is too small. Moreover, we don't see any reins or bits in the classic sense on dragons.
What do I hold on to?
Whatever you can.
Most often, it seems that dragons pick up not so much commands as intentions, as if they feel what the rider wants.
I don't know how to ride a dragon.
Nobody does, until they ride a dragon.
Therefore, the most plausible version, supported by the texts of the books themselves, is an empathic or telepathic connection. The rider and the dragon can feel each other. The dragon responds to emotions and even mental intentions. Changing riders is an extremely rare and dangerous event. Having established a connection with one person, the dragon rarely rebonds.
I'm here to help. Don't eat the help. Next time I have an idea like that, punch me in the face.
This can be called a kind of magical communication channel, available only to those in whose veins flows the blood of old Valyria, like the Targaryens or Valarians. But it's important to understand, this is not an innate skill in the usual sense, but rather an inherited magical predisposition that activates under certain conditions. But I would like to point out that dragon riders are not the only ones in Martin's world who have such a connection with animals. There are also the so-called wargs. Wargs, as is known, can penetrate the consciousness of animals, control their actions, feel through them fear, pain, and instincts.
What's wrong with him?
He's a warg. He can enter the mind of animals, see through their eyes.
And with a strong enough connection, they can literally live inside the animal even after their own body's death. This mechanism of deep mental connection between a human and an animal in the world of Ice and Fire is described quite thoroughly in the lines of Bran, Varamir Sixskins, and especially Bloodraven. By the way, if you haven't read A Song of Ice and Fire in the book version, almost all the Starks are essentially wargs, and there are both direct indications and many indirect hints of this. Bran, an obvious warg, enters the wolf, the raven Hodor, sees dreams typical for wargs, such as Varamir Sixskins.
Were you inside the wolf again, little lord? I didn't ask for black magic dreams.
Jon Snow is also a potential warg. The connection with the direwolf ghost is very strong. Echoes of this are in the series. The direwolf accompanies him almost everywhere, and even at the moment of his resurrection, it is nearby. Arya also feels Nymeria. Despite the distance, she has dreams from the perspective of the she-wolf.
Nymeria, it's me.
The Starks are descendants of the first men, and according to the lore, they almost certainly descend from wargs. Their emblem itself is a direwolf. The connection with wild animals is literally in their blood. That's why Jon Snow is able to control a dragon. Just like Daenerys, he is a descendant of two ancient houses, the Starks and the Targaryens. He has the blood of those who could merge with wolves and those who conquered dragons. Essentially the perfect rider.
I don't know how to ride a dragon.
Everything we've already described is quite canonical, confirmed in George Martin's text. But let's finally move into the realm of assumptions and theories that rely on the internal logic of the world, but have not yet received final confirmation on the pages of the books. If Daenerys' connection mechanism with dragons is similar to what wargs use, can we assume that Targaryens are mostly wargs, able to bind their consciousness to dragons? What does this give us? And can it explain Daenerys' madness within the logic of George Martin's world? As I already said, according to the canon, both in the book and partially in the series, wargs can inhabit animals. This is a key feature of their gift. A person's consciousness can, in essence, relocate into another creature. If we accept the hypothesis that Targaryens are a kind of wargs, then Jaime Lannister's phrase about the Mad King takes on new meaning. As Jaime said, the Mad King didn't believe he would die, rather he thought he would be reborn as a dragon. At first glance, typical madman's ravings. But if we remember that wargs have the real ability to live in an animal after the body's death, it becomes clear where this idea might have come from. Aerys Targaryen might not have just been raving, but trying to implement a practice to remain living in a dragon after death. The prologue of A Dance with Dragons gives us important confirmation. When the human body dies, the soul remains living inside the beast, but with each day, memories fade and the beast becomes slightly less of a warg, and slightly more of a wolf until nothing of the human remains, only the beast. This is exactly what we see with the Orell, the warg shown in the series. When Jon Snow kills him, he relocates into the eagle and in the next moment attacks Jon, now as a bird. But the series doesn't reveal another feature of this connection, namely the influence of the animal on the human. And here, Martin left another interesting fragment in the same prologue. Of all the beasts, it's easiest to bond with dogs. They live so close to humans that they themselves become almost human. Settling into a dog, wearing its skin, is like wearing an old worn shoe made of soft leather. The shoe is already shaped to fit the foot, and the dog is ready to accept the collar. Even if the collar is invisible to the eyes, it's harder with wolves. A person can befriend a wolf, even break its will, but no one can fully tame it. Wolves and women enter into marriage once and for all. You inhabit a wolf, and it's like a marriage. From that day on, the wolf is part of you, and you are part of it. You both change. It's better not to get involved with other beasts. That is, not only does a person penetrate the beast, but the beast penetrates the person. It's not control, it's merging. Now the most interesting part. If we return to the dragons and assume that the Targaryens have the same mechanism, then the next question arises. Does the dragon influence the rider the same way a wolf influences a warg? In other words, does a person become a little bit of a dragon? If we acknowledge that the mental connection between the rider and the dragon is similar to the warg connection, then the dragon can change a person's consciousness, enhance their aggression, emotions, desire for dominance, which we see in Daenerys.
Dracarys.
Some scenes indirectly confirming the dragon's influence on its owner are shown in the series.
You've been up there on a dragon's back. You've had that power. Would you have burned the city down? I don't know.
It turns out that Jon Snow also felt this influence, and that's not all. We've already talked about how a warg can relocate into an animal after death, continue to exist in its body like a spirit unwilling to let go of life. But in George Martin's books, there are hints of the reverse process. With a strong connection, the beast also leaves something of itself in the person. It's not just about memories or emotions. It can be rage, instincts, even fragments of another's consciousness. As if a part of the beast perishing in a close mental bond with the warg is forever imprinted in the human mind. In the prologue to A Dance with Dragons, there's the following mention of the warg Varamir Sixskins. When he took the eagle belonging to Orell, he felt the rage of another skin changer in the bird. Orell was killed by Jon Snow, and the skin changer's hatred for the killer was so strong that Varamir also began to feel animosity towards Jon Snow. It is clearly stated here that Orell's feelings did not disappear. They remained in the animal's body and then were transmitted to Varamir through the animal. That is, the consciousness of the beast can leave an emotional, mental imprint that affects another person. Now let's transfer this idea to the Targaryens and their dragons. Daenerys initially has a connection not with one, but with 3 dragons at once. And as we have already discussed, this connection is not one-sided. It's not just the rider's power over the beast, it's a merging.
The dragons are my children. They're the only children I'll ever have.
And now let's remember Orell, the warg who, at the moment of death, transfers into his bird and lives in it for some time. If such a transition is possible from human to beast, then why not assume the reverse? What happens if it's not the warg that dies, but the animal itself? What if a dying dragon leaves something of itself inside the person connected to it? And dragons are fierce and aggressive creatures. If their mental essence penetrates the mind of a person, especially one who is deeply connected with them, it can be a dangerous transformation. And here's the most interesting part. In Daenerys' behavior, we indeed observe sharp changes right after the loss of each dragon. The first dragon, Viserion, is killed by the Night King. And Daenerys immediately decides to go to war against them.
We are going to destroy the Night King and his army.
The second dragon, Rhaegal, is killed by humans. And we immediately see how Daenerys changes.
We will storm the city, my queen. We will kill your enemies. All of them.
She becomes more harsh and authoritative.
You saw my child fall from the sky.
Tens of thousands of innocents will die.
For the first time, the motive, "I will burn them all if necessary," appears.
I should know him to blame when the sky falls down upon them.
It is from the moment of the second dragon's death that what outwardly looks like madness begins. In the end, the rage living in the dragon breaks out. And Daenerys burns King's Landing. From this perspective, there was no madness at all. It was all just the consequences of Daenerys' connection with the dragons. This interpretation is not yet confirmed, because George Martin's book illustrating the finale has not been released. However, it is quite possible that this is the ending George Martin was preparing for Daenerys, but the mechanics and details were not shown in the series. If the book does come out, we might get an answer someday. This theory sheds light on many mysteries of George Martin's world, from the genetic connection of the Targaryens with dragons to the principles of controlling these creatures. Most importantly, it allows us to look at Daenerys' madness differently. Perhaps it was not just the screenwriter's fantasy, but a consequence of the deep magical laws of the A Song of Ice and Fire universe. Write in the comments if you find this theory convincing. I remind you, it concerns only one aspect of Daenerys' personality. If you're interested in more, you can support the release of the next video in the usual ways and also suggest a character for analysis in the comments. If you're here for the first time, you can check out the reviews of those already covered on the channel's homepage or in a special playlist that should appear on your screen.